Welcome to another weekend bonus episode of the Tech Meme Ride Home podcast. I'm Brian McCullough. As always, this is a portfolio profile episode. Haven't done one of these in a while. This was actually one of the first AI investments that I ever made, almost exactly a year ago now, but before the AI fund was stood up. We're talking to TraceLoop and Nir Gazit, the founder of TraceLoop. Nir, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Let's start off with just sort of the elevator pitch of what TraceLoop does and why I jumped at it when I got introduced to you.
So TraceLoop is a platform for monitoring LLM applications in production. So basically detecting hallucinations, monitoring token usage, and everything that you want to know about how your LLM is performing in production.
So it's observability for LLMs. It's like Datadog for LLMs in a way. But people are familiar with finding bugs and getting notifications of things that aren't working. What is different about doing that in a deployed LLM environment? Like, are you able to not only see, oh, this isn't working, or there was a crash or a bug here, but also this output is bad because the input was wrong or the weights are wrong? Are you able to get that level of granularity in a deployed LLM?
Yes, and I think the main challenge here is that it's really hard if you get like an arbitrary generated output from an LLM. It's really hard to tell what's a good output versus a bad output. So what people are usually doing is that they're using this method called LLM as a judge. So they're basically taking another LLM and using it to score the results you've gotten from the first LLM call. But you can't really do it in production, right? Because the costs would be too high. You're going to basically call for every LLM call you're making, you're going to make another LLM call just to validate the first call. So what we've built is we basically built a set of metrics ourselves that is able to accurately score results without using LLMs. And we've seen that it correlates well with human feedback and LLM as a judge metrics.
And you're using open telemetry as well, right?
Right. So I think we basically pioneered the usage of open telemetry to monitor production applications like LLM production applications.
So again, this is real-time stuff. So like I have a LLM out in the world, users are using it, and I can see it's almost like that's got to be a huge help in terms of refining your model, because like it's doing the dog fooding of people actually getting the hallucinations or doing inputs that make the model behave poorly or something like that, or badly. So is this is basically applicable to anybody that's working on an LLM right now?
Yes, and I think the nice thing about using open telemetry and like our open source is called open telemetry, so you can understand the
Did you come up with that term, open LLMetry?
No, actually we saw it on Twitter, on X. There's some guy, like we were developing the open LLMetry package, we didn't have a name yet, and then someone wrote like waiting for open LLMetry, and we were like, okay, this is a good name. So I wrote to him and I asked him, hey, can we use this name? And he was like, sure. So now if you go down the repo, the README, you will see we linked to that tweet from back in September, I think last September.
So it's as simple, if someone wanted to test this out right now, it's as simple as just putting a snippet of code in and boom?
Yes. So basically, you just one line of code, you install the SDK, and we basically connect to all the SDKs of all the LLM providers, vector databases, frameworks like LangChain, LlamaIndex, and others. So it's one line, and you get metrics and traces just out of the box, just like that. And because it's using open telemetry, it's you can connect it to, any observability platform that you want. You can connect it to TraceLoop, and then you get another layer of the quality measure that we've talked about before, but you can also connect it to Datadog or New Relic or Dynatrace, and you get, traces and metrics.
So I haven't mentioned this yet, but if anyone wants to check it out while we're talking, it's traceloop.com. Also, I'll have links in the show notes, of course. Tell me how this idea came about in the sense that, the current sort of generation of AI is only a couple years old, but you had been working with machine learning and chatbots for a while. Is that right?
Yeah. So we actually was working at Google with LLMs before they were that large. We were trying to build a chatbot with BERT. Actually, it was back in 2019, I think. And it was really difficult. It wasn't like the quality was miserable. It just didn't work that well. And so fast forward, to last year, GPT-3 came out and everything, everyone was starting to use it. And we thought it's a good tool that we can use to build. We were building actually something else back then. We were building a platform for generating tests automatically. And we thought, like unit testing, front-end testing, back-end testing, end-to-end tests. And we thought, hey, like GPT can be really a good, tool that we can use to generate tests. So we built this kind of crazy agent architecture where we had GPT trying to understand your system and then using tools to start writing the code and then testing it and then making sure that the test passes and it's not flaky. And it was pretty cool. But there were two problems. One, it wasn't working that well. Like the outputs, the tests that we were able to generate were not that impressive. They were pretty naive or not working that well. Too many, too flaky, too many bugs, or I don't know. And then the second thing is we had no way of monitoring that agent's execution. It's at some point I remember like working on this, generating just one test for this one customer, and I let the agent run for a while, and suddenly I noticed that like just this single test generation cost me like $50.
Right, because like you described, you were using an LLM to monitor the LLM, so you're calling out twice essentially.
No, I was using the LLM, the agent. The agent was
Right.
based on LLM, so it could make an arbitrary amount of calls to
Oh,
OpenAI
okay. Yeah.
to understand the next steps.
Right, but the point is that can run up a cost pretty quickly. Yeah.
Yeah. So we were looking for a way to monitor it. So we basically built something like TraceLoop, like as the first version of TraceLoop internally, just so we can understand what's happening. And then the quality issues came in later because we wanted a way to make the agent work better and better with time. And then at some point we got to a point where we were like spending 60% of our time building the monitoring tool and then 40% just building the agent that was actually our product. And then at some point we realized that maybe the monitoring platform is the thing we should be building.
So you mentioned that you had been working on LLMs at Google. You're still a small team of like what, 4 still?
Yeah, we're 4 people, me and my co-founder, and then 1 engineer and 1 data science.
I'm going to ask you. Don't let me forget to ask you if you're hiring at the end of this. But so when you decided, okay, this is again that moment when Chris and I came off the bench and things like that. Like this is an exciting thing. We've got a tool that people are going to need. Like, what was the decision-making process in terms of, all right, let's go ahead and do a startup? Had either you or your co-founder done a startup before?
No, this is our first try. So me and my co-founder, we've known each other for a while, and we always wanted. We were even roommates at some point, and we always wanted to start a startup. And it was always like the bad timing for one of us. Either, I was at Google, I was happy, like, why would I quit like a good job at Google to start a startup? And then Gal, my co-founder, was doing something and he couldn't really do a startup. And then we ended up both being at Fiverr. Gal was there before me. He was a group manager, and he convinced me to join. So I joined like 3 years ago as a chief architect. I actually left Google to join him, and then we were at the same company. So it was the right timing for both of us to decide to leave. And okay, now we either do it now or we'll never do it. So we quit and decided to just go for it.
So it was one of those things that this was something you wanted to do. This was and then finally just the planets aligned, and then you saw that the AI space was taking off. So you're like, yeah. That's always an interesting question because people have different answers. Sometimes, like you said, why leave a good job at Google? And then, it's like this fraught decision. And then other people, it's like, well, this was always in my blood. It was just a matter of when and what. That sounds like you were on that end.
Yeah.
You also did Y Combinator Winter 23, I believe. I always like to ask people about that. Two parts on this one. The second part being, tell me about your experience with Y Combinator, but also did getting into Y Combinator also add impetus to like, all right, let's do this. This is for real.
No, so we actually quit our jobs before even applying to YC. We were starting to work with like no funding, nothing. We just I wouldn't say garage. We just sat at another friend's startup offices. And then we applied to YC and was like, we probably won't get in because it's the chances are slim, but let's do it. Like it was the last day to apply, so we just we applied and we said, okay, probably won't get in, but it's a nice shot. And I remember we were so sure we won't get in that it was just before the holidays. So me and my co-founder were about to like, we just we quit our jobs at Fiverr. So we said, okay, let's go for a vacation. It will probably be our last real vacation before we have a startup. So I was about to fly to Colombia, and Gal flew to Vietnam. And then there were some circumstances, and I couldn't fly at the end, so I stayed home. And and Gal was in Vietnam, and then 2 weeks after, I get an email. It was like, "Hey, so we want to invite you for an interview at YC, and here's a link. Just choose the right time that works for you tomorrow." It was a Wednesday. I won't forget it. It was a Wednesday, and I said like, "Yeah, it's Thursday. Just choose. You do want to interview at 8 p.m., 11 p.m., or 2 a.m." And I was like, "Okay, let's do 8 p.m. I think it's a good time." And I asked Gal, can you join? He was like in the middle of nowhere in Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
and he joined, and there we were, like within 24 hours, both of us like ready for this YC, 10-minute interview, infamous interview, uh, and it went terrible. It was so fast. It was just 10 minutes. They bombarded us with questions, and then it was done. And you were like, okay, I think we haven't. I'm pretty sure we haven't gotten in. And they were like, okay, fine. We knew that this will happen. And then the next day, we got a phone call from Aaron, one of the partners. He was like, yeah, you're in.
Why did you think it had gone poorly?
Because they ask you a lot of questions. They don't let you. Sometimes they don't even let you finish the answer, and it's expected. Like they if you search online about like how the interview process looks like, they tell you that it will be like that. But during the process, you feel like, I'm not answering the right questions, so they want to, that's just why they ask you more questions. So you always feel like you're on a defense, and you can't really explain well about your startup.
Well, tell me about the actual experience of going through YC and demo day and like the resources they provide. Like, sounds like it was a positive experience one way or another. I've never heard anyone say anything bad about it, but just tell me your takeaway from the experience.
Yeah, so YC, for us, YC was really, really good. It was the first or second batch post COVID. So we got a chance to we flew to San Francisco and we lived there during the batch. So first, you get to meet all of these super talented founders, and we're also like kept in touch with many of them till today. So it's a great network to be part of to begin with. And then, it really helps you to focus on the right things. And I think especially for first-time founders, nobody tells you how to start a startup. Like, this is the first time I'm doing something where I have no idea what will be the next step. When I used to work at Google, I know how to be a software engineer or how to be a tech lead. I know like how the day-to-day looks like and what is expected of me. And then now as a CEO, I have no idea. Like, I have no idea how to do sales, how to do marketing, how to fundraise. And so YC is a great, school for understanding how to become a founder.
Um, what is it? I mean, again, you're a first-time founder, so I don't know. Like, the question I wanted to ask is, what do you think the difference is about doing an AI startup in this moment? And like you said, you don't have the previous experience, but to the degree that you can extrapolate, everything's moving so fast. Every other day, someone else is leapfrogging with a new model and new techniques, and you know, being at the cutting edge of a frontier technology, does that make it harder to do a startup? I would think yes. Or also, is that also possibly the thing that you get the most juice out of, is being on the cutting edge?
I think it's exciting. I love the day to day, and I love the fact that we are, as you said, like at the cutting edge of technology. Uh, the main thing that we see is that everything is moving so fast. And when we started, we built like instrumentations for OpenAI when it was fine. But then, you know, lots of other models came out, and you see you really feel the market and how it's changing like every day. At the beginning, everyone was mainly using OpenAI, but then Google came out with the Gemini models, model family. So now everyone's using Gemini. So we need to support that. And then OpenAI came out with the Vision, with GPT-4 Vision. So we need to support that. And then Anthropic came out with Claude 3, and you need to support that. And then, we have every day there's a new model, there's a new something framework, a vector database, and we need to support them all because people are using everything. People are trying everything, and they expect everything to just work for them.
And I mean, like, Anthropic didn't even exist when you got started. So, right. I mean, tomorrow there could be somebody that announces themselves to the world. And um, do you ever worry about a lot of the startups in this space? Sort of the cliche is, well, GPT-5 could come out tomorrow and obviate a bunch of chatbot type startups or something. You're not in that space. You're more of a picks and shovels sort of company here. But is that a concern that's unique to working in AI, where it's like, well, maybe what we do, the next generation, which could come out next week, could obviate us, and we either have to go back to square one or pivot hard or something?
I don't think so because I keep hearing people saying about a lot of like Gen AI startups, that there are like a thin layer on top of OpenAI. This is like something that people say pretty often. But the thing is, like, I think you could also say the same things about the first web applications. Like, it's just a thin layer on top of Linux. I don't know.
Right. Um,
So I would say, like, sometimes like the real I would say real interesting thing about these various AI startups is not just the technology, but it's the product around it. Even around the testing generation that we were building. I think one of the main challenges were how to how does the product should how the product should look like for our like developer that are using it, because for example the generation takes time and you need to somehow to communicate it to the user and allow them to edit and make changes or instruct the model. And so like for example I would say Copilot, like GitHub Copilot is a really good, it's not just a good, it's basically a thin layer on top of OpenAI, but it's really successful because it uses the right prompt and it has a really nice and well thought of integration into VS Code, which makes it extremely popular. But at the end of the day, it's just a prompt.
Um, just real quick, because I did mention this or talk about this on the show recently. Based on what you're seeing, do people still feel that OpenAI is the cutting edge? I know that every other day, oh, we're equivalent to GPT-4 and this one and that one. But based on popularity and just the anecdotal, do people is OpenAI still the winner, at least in most people's minds?
I think so. The data that we see around the open source and the platform as well, it's like the vast majority are using OpenAI. Some of them are also using other models, but the vast majority are using OpenAI and sometimes nothing else. And I think it's an interesting question to tell whether it's like it's actually still is the best model like GPT-4o, or does Anthropic or Gemini or others have comparable models in terms of performance. So I'm not sure if there's like a clean, yes, right or wrong answer here. And I would say that sometimes it's just it's a matter of like a trend, because I often hear people saying, yeah, we use OpenAI because everyone is using it. Like we chose OpenAI because this is what everyone is using.
Mm-hmm.
I don't hear a lot of people actually evaluating 4 different models and then choosing OpenAI because it was the best model for their
right,
task.
or it hasn't devolved into that. I'm a Mac only person, or I only develop for Android versus it hasn't calcified into those warring camps yet. Okay, interesting.
No, maybe there's like one camp of like the open source models.
Right.
Yeah, like Mistral and Llama and like
Right.
there's folks that use these. And
the philosophical divide of I want to throw my lot in with open source versus a proprietary platform.
Exactly.
So GitHub stars, 1,400 stars, over 1,000 organizations using. Actually, what can you tell me about the uptake y'all are seeing right now?
For the open source.
Right. For right. What you're working on.
So for the open source, I think it's been hugely successful. We were lucky because I think when we started, we chose OpenTelemetry because we were super familiar with this technology, but it was like it was a hard choice at the beginning because it complicated our SDK by a lot. It would have been much easier to just build an SDK for collecting the data that is like super proprietary and that's it, and focus on the platform. But building an open source, open telemetry based SDK has proven to be successful because we were like the other observability platform seemed to really like it from the beginning. So we had like I think it was the second month we had folks from like New Relic and Datadog coming and like contributing, like trying the open source and then adding docs, explaining how to integrate it with their system, or writing blog posts in their, New Relic wrote a blog post about building with OpenTelemetry in like 1 month after we released the open source. So they really helped the open source succeed at the beginning. And yeah, so now we have like we have more than 30 contributors who are actively contributing to the open source, and this really helps us to keep up with the industry.
Well, and you're seeing that OpenLLMetry is like Amazon engineers at Amazon, IBM, Microsoft are all using it. So it is getting uptake even at the big players.
Yeah, exactly. We see like Amazon, people from Amazon and Nvidia, and like folks from lots of like big, prominent AI companies using or promoting the open source within, their respective communities.
Well, to that end, and to kind of wrap things up, if people are interested, number one, traceloop.com. Number two, obviously, check it out on GitHub and be another contributor to help Nir and the four of them keep this thing going. But also, are you hiring? Are you raising? If people are interested in what we've been talking about, what should they know? How should they get involved?
So first, yes, we are hiring. It's been crazy maintaining customers for TraceLoop and the open source, just the four of us so far, but we're definitely hiring right now. And also, yeah, contributions, if people want to try out, we have a community Slack, everything. If you could just go to the open source, you can go to the open source even through our website. So we have a very active community Slack, so you can chat with me, and if you have any questions, I'm helping. I'm helping folks to use the open source, even if they're not using the platform. I'm helping people connect it to Datadog or connecting it to other observability platforms, and it's fun and interesting to see this adoption. And if you're looking to detect hallucinations in production without using LLMs, then I think TraceLoop can be a really good solution for you. And I think we're pretty unique in that domain so far. I haven't seen other platforms doing something similar so far.
So if that's you, if you're working on this stuff, reach out to Nir, reach out to me. I'll put you in touch with them and the team. Nir, thanks for coming on the show and telling us all about TraceLoop.
Thank you. It was great being here.